Today we continue with the meaning of life, part 2. We're still going to go through all these different philosophers, hopefully not too many of them. Today we cover Hume and Kant. For our purpose, Hume and Kant are important philosophers, and we will come back to Hume. I guess in a couple of weeks, we'll come back to him when we talk about moral dilemmas. So Hume and Kant, they go together. And then we wanna talk briefly about Hegel and Schopenhauer. I don't have a lot of respect for Hegel or Schopenhauer, so I will just cover them, see what they had to say about life, the meaning of life, and then we can move on to Bentham and Mill. Hopefully we can do everything today. Okay, are you guys ready? Yes, ready for another exciting lesson of philosophical questions. David Hume, known as the great skeptic of empiricism. We covered these philosophers already when we were talking about what is real, right? And free will as well. Regarding like the meaning of life and moral philosophy, David Hume, and we went through this already as well. He said, since all our judgments are based on our past experience, if that past experience is mixed, we say it may happen in the future. But if our past experience is uniform, it's always happened without any exception, we fall into the illusion of thinking it must happen. There is no necessity in anything that happens in the world. Matters of fact are never necessary. And so these things, our judgments, the way we believe things will happen, these are based on our past experiences. Another way of saying that is based on custom and habit. All our judgments come from custom and habit. We can never have certain knowledge of any facts. That is our reality. Knowledge of the world is based on effects of custom, not of reasoning. That's the conclusion that he draws. What we think of as reasoning is actually a psychological disposition, some kind of natural instinct. So I'm being very simplistic here, right? So if our reasoning is based on our natural instinct, what does that mean? That means, for one, that means we are basically just like animals. We are no different from the animals. There is no fundamental difference between humans and animals. I don't know why I have this picture. It's just a nice picture of a boy with a holy cow. I guess this is India, right? In India, people believe in holy cows. When I was growing up, I used to say holy cow. Holy cow. Didn't even know what it meant. Holy cow. It's just a funny thing to say. I think in Batman, the TV series, nobody here has seen it probably. This is like Batman from, I guess, 1960s or something. And Robin would say to Batman, holy cow, Batman. Why am I talking about these things? This thing that Hume said, that Hume believed, this was a radical, extremely radical thing to say back in his day, right? This is before Darwin. And even after Darwin, a lot of people had difficulty accepting that we're just like animals. We are animals. It's just that we're very intelligent. We're intelligent animals. But when Hume said this, he knew that this was a dangerous thing to say because people believed we are not like animals. We are above the animals. We are only a little lower than the angels, right? We are special because we are made in the image of God. How dare you say that there is no difference between humans and animals? That was just Hume being an empiricist. So because our reasoning is based on our instinct, our past experiences, he says instinct actually rules over reason. Our moral sense, he says, is actually, if you analyze it carefully enough, our moral sense is actually based on feelings, passion, and instinct, not on anything that is of reason. This directly contradicts Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant, his moral philosophy had to do with reasoning, being rational, as opposed to being emotional. But for Kant, our morality comes from our senses, our feelings, our passion and instinct. He said, it's a famous thing that Hume said. He said, reason is the slave of the passions. I think the full quotation is like, reason is and ought to be, reason is and ought to be the slave of the passions. This is why Hume is called a sentimentalist. Sentimentalist doesn't mean he's like full of emotion. The way we use the word sometimes is, oh, he's being sentimental. He's being like overly emotional. Crying, that kind of thing is being sentimental, I suppose. He's not using the word that way. For him, sentimentalist means, being sentimental means be of the senses. We have five senses, right? So sentimentalism, David Hume's sentimentalism is this moral philosophy that says our moral judgments are actually based on our feelings. We don't want to admit that sometimes, but that is based on our feelings. Okay. And these feelings that we have, or these passions that we have, they become our taste. We each have a certain taste, and that taste is our sense of moral value. Such morality is called descriptive because for Hume, there is no divine or absolute sense of right or wrong. That's the conclusion that he came to. So Humean moral system, Humean moral philosophy is called descriptive moral system, as opposed to deontic or normative. Sometimes we use the word normative, meaning there's the right way and there's the wrong way, and the values between the right and wrong, that they never change. So Hume is the opposite of that. He did not believe in a prescriptive, deontic, or absolutist morality, aka Immanuel Kant. Okay, so that is Humean moral system, right? Everything is based on our senses. So what does that mean for how we should act in our lives? He says our morality is based on sensibilities acquired through centuries of civilization, right? So the best way for us to produce morally upright people is to educate them. Educate them, good manners, give them the finest culture, and then they will be a cultured person, right? So for Hume, it's the most important thing is how we surround ourselves so that we could become the kind of person that we want to be. So if you want to be a deontic medical doctor, right? Then you study for maybe the first two. I'm sorry. What am I saying? Sorry. Not, um, so if you want to cultivate good sensibilities, um, my mind is just gone blank. I'm sorry. If you want to cultivate good sensibilities, then you have to get a good education. Things like art, literature. I should have had this. Like art, literature, and learn about your culture, learn about your traditions. These things are most important. So this is hearkening back to Protagoras, that we are the measure of all things. And this the more you think about it, the easier it is to be a Humean moralist. So for Hume, our sense of morality comes out of our society, right? My taste, my moral sense is based on my society, my culture. That means if you want to live as a moral person, you have to educate yourself. Get to know I have some examples here. Yeah, like get to know some great, stories like Victor Hugo. This is Les Mis. Who has seen Les Mis? Raise your hand. Nobody. Oh, you've seen it. Yes. Good for you. I remember first time I saw Les Mis. Actually, no, that's not true. I first heard Les Mis on a tape. I acquired the tape first, and I listened to the tape probably, I don't know, like 1,000 times until the tape got, it got lengthened and I couldn't listen to the tape anymore. So I was a super fan of the musical even before. And then I finally, one time, I actually bought a ticket to Les Mis. And because I already was a super fan, it was a wonderful experience. And I never went back again because it's too expensive, these musicals. But if you watch plays like this, stories like this, read, watch movies, then by watching these things, right, you develop a taste, right? That's what Hume is all about. You develop a taste. You develop this fine sensibility. You become, I guess, what you call cultured. You become a cultured man. I guess in Hume's case, a cultured British gentleman, right? Sniffing I don't know what that powder thing is that they keep sniffing. But so maybe that's going a bit too far. But what's another thing? Right, right. Koreans, we have our traditions, we have our culture, right? We have we have a sense of what is the right thing to do, right? Koreans get angry when they see a foreigner talk to an older person, right? Very disrespectfully, right? And they use they don't use the honorifics. Like they use 반말, right? And then, they're like kind of treating an old person without the respect that the older person requires. And then you would maybe talk to that foreigner later, right? Hey, I want to talk to you. Come here for a second, right? And you try to teach him the Korean way because that is the morally right thing to do. And the guy, maybe he's an American, right? He says, no, I don't bow to anybody, right? We're all equal human beings. Nobody's above me, nobody's below me, right? Because that is his taste. That's how we end up with different value systems. I love my am I wasting your time? I don't know. I think we have time today because this isn't long. I don't think today's lecture is long. And if I don't finish, I have the next Tuesday's lecture to finish on the classical answers, right? So I feel like I have some time. Let me say, I love my wife. I love her dearly, right? I would never, never, ever think about having an affair behind her back. That would be immoral, right? That would be a sin against God and, before God and before men or before other people, right? And if I was found out having an affair with another woman, I would go to jail, right? And I would deserve to go to jail. Not so if I were a Saudi Arabian man, right? I can have a wife, but I can marry another woman. And if Allah were to have blessed me with a certain amount of wealth, right? And if the calculations are right, I could be blessed with having 3 wives. It's considered an honorable thing. I know it's hard for you guys to think that way, but it's a different culture. For them, it is a sign that Allah has blessed me. And if you say, well, why do you need 2 wives? Right? Why can't you just love one woman? Their answer would be, I think, I'm just, using the principle of charity, trying to be in their shoes, right? What they would say is, why would I support just one mother and her children, my children, when I could support 2 women and more children? I'm helping more people, right? I'm taking care of 3 wives and maybe 12 children. I can do that, right? I don't spend money on myself, right? All the wealth that I've accumulated, by the blessings of Allah, right? I give to my loved ones. What is wrong with that? And we get along, right? You Westerners, you don't understand how our family works. They love each other. The older wife is like the big sister to the younger wife, right? She teaches her things, right? And the younger wife brings joy to my older wife because she's kind of, she's getting old, that kind of thing. It may sound like poor excuse, but you have to believe that for them, it's not just an excuse, right? It's just their sense of morality is different because that is the culture is different, right? So this is Hume. I'm sorry, I want to take some time talking about this. So this is why David Hume, in a nutshell, his philosophy is custom then is the great guide of human life. Custom. By custom, he means everything to do with human civilization, right? Not just one little specific thing. Everything that surrounds us, our human society, is the basis of how we get our sense of values. It is that principle alone which renders our experience useful. So this is Humean moral system. This is called descriptive moral system. Over to Immanuel Kant. Kant would say, Mr. David Hume, no, no, you're deceiving yourself. You're deceiving yourself by saying our sense of morality just comes from culture and customs. No, that is not true. This is Kantian moral system. How should we live? The whole thing about how should we live is Kant's second book, the Critique of Practical Reason. When we were talking about what is real, we talked about his first book. That's his most famous book, The Critique of Pure Reason. Here he talks about the critique of practical reason. The aim of the second book is how should we live our lives, right? How should I live my life as a rational human being? He says, and this is the book where he gives this really famous saying, two things fill the mind with increasing admiration and awe, the starry heavens above me and the moral law within me. I may actually have a picture. All right, okay, I get the picture. I should have read this. So this is from the book, the second book, The Critique of Practical Reason. Two things fill the mind with ever new and increasing admiration and awe, the oftener and more steadily we reflect on them. The more I think of them, the more wondrous these things are. What are these two things? The starry heavens above me and the moral law within me. The starry heavens above me, that's his pure reason. The phenomenal world, the starry heavens above me, that's the phenomenal world that we experience as human beings through the grid of space-time and the categories, the phenomenal world. The moral law within me, that is within me, that is basically, he would say, the noumenal world. The thing that he said we can never get to know using reason, he goes there now. He reaches out to the noumenal world and he says, we have to assume that these things exist in the noumenal world. The moral law within me, that is a noumenal thing. To live a life of meaning as a rational being, to live a meaningful life, we must follow our sense of right and wrong. So the sense, you might think, oh, wait a minute, he's talking about the same thing as David Hume. Because David Hume builds his philosophy through senses, right? Hence, sentimentalist. He's a sentimentalist. His sense is literally the physical five senses. For Kant, his sense of right and wrong is, I suppose, if you push them, his soul, something within him. It's not his body. He's not talking about his five senses. He's talking about, I look within myself and I find the moral law within. I find that I have a sense of right and wrong. I am a creature of morality. I have a sense of right and wrong. It's a law. So this is not Hume's sentimentalist senses, the feelings. He's talking about a moral sense that is given to all of us a priori without experience. We have it ever since we are, I guess, born. Because we're human beings, we have this. Maybe babies don't know because they don't have the power of reflection yet, right? They don't know how to look within themselves. And so babies are like animals, right? You have to treat them like animals, I guess. But once you are old enough and you gain this power of reflection, all you have to do is look within yourself, and then you see the moral law. Reason tells us of the necessity of these moral laws. And he says we can discover them simply using reason. This is practical reason, not pure reason, practical reason. And he calls it categorical imperative. Uh, I don't have a separate slide for that because, right, I don't want to run out of time. So let me just briefly talk about what categorical imperative is. Do I not have the slide? Oh, right. I kind of have it. No, but that's the kingdom of ends. So let me explain what the categorical imperative is. It's nothing difficult. It's not difficult. Categorical imperative as opposed to hypothetical imperative. Hypothetical is an if statement. If I want to be wealthy, I have to make a lot of money. The easiest way to make money is to steal money from someone. So if I want to be wealthy and I want to be wealthy, then I should steal money from somebody. That's an example of a hypothetical imperative, right? I have this sense I should steal money because I want something. Hypothetical imperatives, they don't guide us very well. It's hypothetical. What is a categorical imperative? Categorical imperative is in order for me to judge whether this thing, let's say that I want to do, is morally good or morally not good, make it a universal law. That's categorical imperative. Try to turn it into a universal law. So, example of lies. This is a bit controversial. So let's say I want to lie. I want to lie to somebody, and I'm wondering, is lying morally right or morally wrong? So I tried to make it into a categorical imperative, try to universalize the act of lying. I feel okay when I lie to somebody, right? I don't feel bad about it. I don't mean anybody, real harm. I just like lying. I get a kick out of lying, right? So I'm talking to you and I lie. I feel okay. So I'm thinking, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with lying? So if I universalize that, that means if I'm okay lying to somebody, that must mean it's okay for somebody to lie to me. It has to be okay for me, right? If it's okay for me to lie to you, then it has to be okay for you to lie to me. Is that acceptable? And if I say, no, I don't want anyone to lie to me. If everyone lied and then you couldn't trust anything anyone said, we wouldn't have a society. Nothing would work, right? We couldn't have anything like banking. We couldn't get married, right? Marriage is a kind of commitment, right? I promise to, I don't know, love you, what is that, in health and in sickness or something, till death do us apart, right? I have to mean what I'm saying, and my, bride has to believe that I mean what I'm saying. If she thinks I'm lying, right, why would she want to marry me, right? So, uh, lying cannot be a categorical imperative. It fails the test. It's like a test, right? Lying self-destructs, right? I feel like killing somebody. And I think it's okay, to go around killing people because I'm very strong, right? I have these weapons. And I feel like it should be okay, law of the jungle, right? It should be okay to like go around killing people. Would it be okay for other people to kill you? No, I don't want anyone to kill me, right? Then again, that fails the categorical imperative test. So that's a simple thing that Kant says. It's called categorical imperative as opposed to hypotheticals. Um, if you think about the categorical imperative, he makes it sound difficult, right? He's being a philosopher, right? But if you think about what he's doing, this is really an ancient law that exists almost universally everywhere. It's called the Golden Rule. Christians have their version of it, which I kind of memorized growing up, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is what, right? If you want other people to be nice to you, be nice to them, right? If you're not nice to other people, do not expect others to be nice to you, because that you'll be breaking the golden rule, right? Everything that happens between human beings have to be reciprocal. Reciprocal. I'm sorry, reciprocal. So it's a controversial thing that Kant said. Well, what if you're okay? This isn't like Kant's specific example, but let's have the example of the Germany Nazis, right? You have a good friend who's a Jew, and he is hiding in your house, and then some Nazi soldiers come to your house. They knock on your door. Hello, Gesundheit, or something. You're speaking German, right? And then they say, we're just wondering, do you have any Jews hiding in your house? If I'm a Kantian, I say, I cannot lie. Yes, there is a man hiding in my attic, but please do not hurt him. He's my friend. Is that morally the right thing to do? And Kant says, yes. It's kind of hard to accept, but he says, yes, because lying can never be a good thing. So he sticks with his convictions. Okay, then, it doesn't make sense. Because if you lie, you're going to save your friend's life. If you tell the truth, then your friend's going to get arrested and you'll probably die. What Kant would say to that is, how do you know that's going to happen? How do you know? Are you God? Do you have control over all the events that happen in life? You have no control, right? You don't know how the German Nazi officer is going to react. You don't know if your friend is staying in the room, right? Maybe your friend heard the knocking by the Nazis, right? And maybe he's running outside right now, right? Maybe he's not in his room anymore. So he's going around the house right now, right? And if the German officers were to go up to the room, they would find an empty room and your friend would escape, right? But because you lied and the officers, they believed you, they go straight out. And then they discover your friend running away just outside your house and end up arresting him. How do you know that's not going to happen? Well, that's ridiculous. So Kant's idea is we have no control over events that happen. All we can do is obey the moral law within, right? If you know lying is bad, then it's bad all the time. You have to believe, I suppose, if you push him to it, right? Because he is a religious man. You have to believe that God provides, God's providence. How many times have we lied thinking we were helping somebody, right? And it ended up hurting that person. Someone like, the friar in Romeo and Juliet. I don't know if you know that. I kind of forgot the story now, but I forgot the details. But the friar, I believe, he lies, meaning well. He thinks he is helping either like Romeo or Juliet, but he lies, right, on their behalf. And then that lie becomes the thing that ends up killing Juliet, I think. And then because Juliet kills herself, Romeo kills himself. So if he had been a better Christian and he had more faith in God and he was Kantian, and this is before Kant, this is Shakespeare, right? If he had been a Kantian, he would have told the truth, believing that God would take care of the rest. So that's Kant's categorical imperative. If something is wrong, something is always wrong. He says, we must seek after the kingdom of ends. We must seek a kingdom of ends as opposed to the kingdom of means. Kingdom of means is nature. Kingdom of means is nature. There is no such thing as morality. There's no such thing as justice in nature. Nature is just nature. I think I have a picture here. Nature is just nature. We love nature, but there he is, this, I guess, water buffalo is being about to be eaten by two lions. Are the lions saying, thank you for your sacrifice, right? Are they thanking him? No, they're just eating. They're just animals. There's no morality in nature. So morality does not belong in nature. We human beings are not creatures of nature. We are creatures, you would say, the numinal world, or we could say the kingdom of God or the kingdom of ends. Um, I don't know if I should say this right now. Okay, so I'll say it right now here. The regarding the kingdom of ends, I think I may have said this before in this class. Uh, this is regarding like free will, free will. I look at myself uh, in the phenomenal world, and I see that I am a insignificant thing compared to the stars, the planets, nature, the majestic world outside. I feel insignificant, right? I feel like a nobody. I feel infinitely small. I feel like I don't matter at all. And then I look within myself and I realize I have this power of free will. I guess I'm a causal agent, right? I can cause things to happen without my being caused by other things. That's the libertarian free will, right? I am a causal agent. So he says, basically, I'm paraphrasing. What he's saying is, I realize I have this power that does not exist anywhere else in the universe. We human beings, I guess you could say, like, because we have a soul, right? We're made in the image of God. So therefore, that makes me more valuable than this entire universe. Right? I find that I am infinitely valuable because I have this thing called free will that nothing else in the universe has, right? Even the planets obey the laws of causality, but I can break the chain of causality with my free will. So he says, getting back to the kingdom of ends, he says, we human beings have a dignity that cannot be bought or sold. We're not just things. We're not like animals. We are worth more than the entire world. I think he's being sort of Christian there because I think that's sort of a biblical idea, right? Idea from the Bible that that we are worth more than the entire world, the physical world, I guess, right? Not other people. That human beings are worth, they're infinitely worthy because we are, I guess, made in the image of God. So we are citizens of the kingdom of ends, which means you must not treat other human beings as means to an end, right? You must not treat other human beings as a means to an end because human beings have this dignity that cannot be bought or sold. You must treat them as ends. Human beings must be treated as ends. I actually said right. Dignity, eternal soul agency that cannot be bought or sold. So that is Kant and his idea of the kingdom of ends. The moral law within hopes for justice and goodness. What does he mean by hope for justice and goodness? Because we're not perfect. We are not perfect beings. We long for moral perfection. We long for it, and yet we're not perfect. So we constantly want to improve, become more perfect. But this hope of wanting more perfection, because it's not found in this world, the moral perfection has to look toward the world after this world. That must mean there has to be life after this world. That must mean there has to be uh, a kingdom of ends where God is the kingdom of God. So it cannot be found in nature, the phenomenal deterministic world. We must hope for a world. We must hope for a world where we can be morally perfect because we're longing after that, right? And that is necessary. This hope is necessary for us to live as human beings. Without this hope, we cannot live as human beings. And so, because we must hope, we do hope. It's very, like I said, you see the religious side of Kant. I think this is a religious side of Kant. I think he thinks he's being perfectly reasonable, perfectly rational, but these are Christian thoughts. We build our civilization, we build cities, we build societies, we have laws governing our societies. We try to realize justice, right? We try to realize moral perfection in our cities, in our societies, in our kingdoms. And yet, our societies always fail because there is no moral perfection in this world. We constantly fail. And yet, we have to hope for that we can achieve this more ideal, more perfect society. I think that's like referencing St. Augustine. I don't know if I mentioned St. Augustine in this class. St. Augustine's city of God, right? He was a Roman citizen. City of Rome was crumbling, it was declining, it was falling apart. And yet we Christians, we're also citizens of the city of God. So that's the kind of thing Kant is referencing here. We must hope for moral perfection that will be achieved, if not here, then there in the kingdom of ends. Um, hope, this hope that we have only makes sense if God exists. If God does not exist, then this hope can't stand, right? The hope will fall apart. And therefore, in order for our hope to survive, we have to postulate God's existence. A moral sense, how we ought to live, gives us reason to accept God's existence. This kind of thinking is called proof from moral law. So it's a kind of proof of the existence of God. I see the moral law within me. This moral law, in order for this moral law to stand, I have to believe I have free will, that I'm a creature with a soul. I have to believe in the existence of heaven, and all these things makes no sense. They make no sense if God doesn't exist, and therefore I postulate. Postulate, postulate is not proof. Postulate is just a fancy word for assume. We have to assume. The thing with the free will as well, Kant is not proving that we have free will. He's saying in order for us to live as human beings, we have to assume that we have free will. Otherwise, this moral law within doesn't make any sense, right? So you see how Kant's argument proceeds here, right? He turns inward. I look within myself, I find the moral law within. That's his starting point. In order for that to be real, I have to postulate free will. And I have to postulate that I can achieve moral perfection. I can hope. Otherwise, this thing doesn't work. And in order for all these, for my hope not to be an illusion, I have to believe in the existence of God. And therefore God exists. Therefore God exists. Heaven exists. And I think he's the first one who would say, this is not a proof of any kind, right? This is something that is necessary, hence practical. This is for practical reason. Practically, in order for us to live as, I mean, he doesn't say it, but as good Christians, I guess he would say, right? We have to postulate these things. So his morality is called deontological morality. This Kantian moral system, it was incredibly popular, right? For decades, I guess maybe for a couple of centuries. Until the rise of secularism, Kantian philosophy was dominant, and it deeply, deeply shaped how Western society worked, I guess, in the 19th century. So it has deep roots in Western culture, like Puritanism. We talk about Puritans. Puritans, they were like the pilgrims in their Mayflower ship coming to the United States, looking for a place to worship freely their God. And Kantian philosophy, moral philosophy, is still very influential. It is almost synonymous, not identical with, but very similar to what we would call Christian morality, right? Or maybe it doesn't have to be Christian. It could be like, I don't know, Islam or Muslim morality, where you have some kind of belief in God. And therefore you believe that morality is absolute. The moral law within you is an absolute thing. And even today, scholars would say Kant's moral philosophy is seen as one of the best systems that preserves the dignity of human beings. Dignity of human beings. If you don't like to think that you're just an animal, right? Oh, what? If you're a human, then you have to believe, oh, I'm just an animal, like other animals. It kind of is a little bit demeaning, right? You look at a dog, you look at a dog walking by, right? And you're thinking, that dog and I, we're kind of same. I feel less worthy to be me. Whereas Kant says you are infinitely worthy because you are a human being. I don't know. I don't know. He has one fatal weakness. Kantian moral philosophy has one fatal weakness, and that is a kind of a Humean thing, right? This fatal weakness is if I say, I look within myself, I, I don't see any moral law within. I just see me. I'm sort of a Humean, right? And my idea of morality is, yeah, it's an external thing. Within me, there's nothing. I'm just an animal, you see, right? My sense of morality comes from the outside, from the society. It's centuries of accumulated taste. It's cultural taste. If I say that to Kant, he has to say, you're lying to yourself. You're deluding yourself. You're not being honest with yourself. He can't say anything else, right? If I deny the moral law within, then his entire moral system crumbles. So I don't want to talk too much about these things because I don't want to run out of time. We could say, yeah, Kant's moral system it's outdated, right? Of course, we're just animals, and we are, we're like human in our moral sensibilities. But I think, at least in a popular culture, I would say we, like society, are still very Kantian in popular culture. Like you look at this, this is a novel by Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. It's got an example of this young man. He thinks he's above regular human tradition, human, moral senses. And he's poor, so he decides to kill this old woman. And she is sort of a villain, right? She's not a good human being. Like nobody loves her, everybody hates her, and she deals with like money, lending money, and she's like a gangster, right? Uh, this old lady. So he decides, I'm gonna kill this lady and steal her money. Why not? Why not? Nothing can stop me. I'm not gonna get caught either, right? It'll be the perfect crime. So he commits this murder, and only afterwards he gets stricken with guilt. Only afterwards he discovers the moral law within. He had been wrong about what he thought about the moral law within. He's stricken with guilt. He gets sick. He physically gets sick because he realizes he had been lying to himself and now he's a murderer, right? And the only way he could redeem himself is to confess to his murder. And then it's in prison when he is like Siberia, someplace, when he's in prison carrying out his sentence that he finds freedom, the inner freedom, right? And is on his path to redemption. Here's another movie. I hope some of you guys have seen this movie, No Country for Old Men, originally a novel by Cormac McCarthy. This movie is interesting because it gives us a character who is entirely amoral, right? Javier Bardem, right? He plays his killer, right? And for him, there's no reason. He just flips a coin. I hope I'm not spoiling the movie. I'm just talking about just a little bit of the movie here. He does a coin flip, right? To decide whether to kill a person or not, right? Heads, I'm sorry, I'm going to kill you. Bang. Or tail, okay, you're lucky, right? You're lucky. I'm going to let you live. Why? Why are you doing this? Because the universe has no meaning, right? There's no sense. There's no right or wrong. We just are. Whereas the old sheriff, he's the sort of the protagonist, right? Tommy Lee Jones. There's a scene at the end of the movie where he's talking to, I guess, his wife in the kitchen. It says something like, I had a dream last night about my father, right? My father, he was going somewhere. It was dark and he was going somewhere. He was on his horse and he was carrying this lantern with him, carrying this light in his bosom. Very symbolic of the novelist, McCarthy. This imagery crops up in his novels, apparently. I only saw the movie, but I read this book, The Road. Who has seen The Road? Raise your hand if you've seen The Road. Beautiful movie, very depressing, dystopian future. And in this movie, again, this is McCarthy's book. It's a dystopian future where human beings have turned into monsters. Human beings are not human beings anymore, right? They've turned into monsters. But this father and his son, they're still human beings, right? They refuse to become monsters. Like, we are still human. We're not like them. We're not like them because we still, he says, carry the fire, right? Do you have the fire within? Yes, I carry the fire with me, Father, Son, right? We're still human beings because we carry the fire. Do not let the fire be extinguished. And he says, we do not, because I'm not going to give you the plot, but this idea that we carry this fire within us, right? It's a popular idea. And I think we see this kind of thing over and over again in books and movies. We all agree with it, right? If not in our own life, we always root for whatever the story is. The protagonist is the character we are rooting for. We want that character to win, right? And the character could be a killer, it could be a convict, a criminal, but the character has some kind of moral code that he tries to live up to, right? So we want him to succeed. I will not kill this, young girl. You're gonna ask me to kill other gangsters. Don't let me kill this little girl. What was that movie? Uh, anyway, Luc Besson's movie or Besson's movie. So that is Kant. The idea that we all have this sense of right and wrong, right? And you could say it's given to us. That is the way the world is. There is good and evil in the world. All right, so let's move on now to German idealism. So this is right after Kant. This guy named Fichte, he saw what Kant was doing. We cannot talk about the noumenal world using reason because we can't know anything about the noumenal world. And yet, Mr. Kant, you're talking about free will, you're talking about God, talking about morality. You're being a little bit inconsistent, right? On the one hand, you say we can't know what the noumenal world is. It's like you are lying to yourself. So in order for us to really talk about what you believe as well, we should talk about God. How can we know what we don't know? And yet you're trying to, have cake and eat it too, kind of thing, right? So abandon this idea that we can't know anything about the noumenal world because you and I both know what the noumenal world is. It is God. So he says, experience is created by the thinking subject. The thinking subject, that is the path of idealism. All existence is living. There is no other life than being. This is, I would say, very Parmenidean. Only one infinite being that exists and no other being than God. So Fichte turns the noumenal world into God. So it's a kind of pantheism. That German idealism is simplistically a kind of pantheism that says everything is actually God. And so we are expressions of God. I am a thinking subject, but God is thinking. When I am thinking, that is like a little part of God is thinking as well. We are all representations of God. Fichte is now who I want to talk about. So we want to get to Hegel, who was influenced by Fichte. And Hegel becomes this incredibly popular philosopher after Kant, right? And so his views come to be known as historicism and dialectic, and his philosophy would later split into the left Hegelianism and right Hegelianism. Right Hegelians would be the religious conservatives, sort of the older crowd, the more traditional crowd. Left Hegelians were the materialistic Hegelians, because Hegel was infamously obscure. People had hard time like understanding what he was saying, like actually saying. And so his ideas were interpreted very differently by religious people and the younger, non-religious, atheistic people. And the most famous of the left Hegelians is Karl Marx. Karl Marx's interpretation of this, God, Hegel calls it spirit or the mind. There is no such thing. but history is actually determined by economic forces. So that's the influence of Hegelianism. He says reality is the manifestation or the phenomenon of the Geist. He calls reality Geist. Being with the capital B, right, is Geist. Because reality is intelligent. It has a mind. It's rationality itself that we are discovering more and more through science, right? All the mathematical formulas, all the laws, physics. These things are the expressions of God, or sorry, of the spirit or the mind in our world. And so Phenomenology of Spirit, that's the famous book that he wrote. So the meaning of the book is spirit is expressing itself in our world through our history. If we study history, knowing that, what we're doing is when we study history, we are studying God because God is expressing himself through history. Therefore, the study of God is ology is the study of, right? Phenomena is what is happening, right? The study of the phenomena of the spirit, the phenomenology of the spirit is the study of God. That's the basic idea of his historicism. History is not random. History, there's purpose to history. Everything that happens according to some logical reason. And that logical reason is God thinking. That's why he said, again, very obscure, the real is the rational and the rational is the real. What do you mean by that, Mr. Hegel? So the meaning is history is rational. History is real. What is real is what's been happening in the world, right? And everything that happens according to some logical reason. And it's for us philosophers like me to figure out the meaning of history. And the meaning of history is God, basically God developing his consciousness. God's consciousness is developing. So this is a weird idea of God, that God himself is changing and growing and developing more and more conscious. Um, so we call this historicism. History is the manifestation of Geist, mind, spirit. It develops logically, rationally. History has a purpose. It doesn't repeat. History doesn't repeat. It progresses. And like I said, Marxism, Karl Marx would later on interpret this historicism purely materialistically and say, I agree with Hegel, but what Hegel is talking about really is economic forces. There is no spirit. It's just economic forces determining the events of history. And history develops through a dialectic of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So he takes basically Kant's idea of thesis and antithesis, which are the opposites. For Immanuel Kant, it was, maybe in this class, I didn't talk about the thesis or the antithesis, sorry. So Kant says thesis, antithesis, they're contradictory, and that's how we know the world isn't really real. I mean, it's not the true whole of reality. That tells us true reality is the noumenal world. Sort of like the Niels Bohr saying complementarity principle. That's the thesis, antithesis. Hegel adds a synthesis. He says this is how history develops. Whenever you have a thesis, some dogmatic, some kind of force, it gives rise to an opposing force. And then they inevitably come into conflict. And then through the conflict, something else, some kind of synthesis is born. It's kind of like the Asian idea of yin and yang, right? From the positive come the negative. From light comes dark. From darkness, light is born. And it's in the intermingling of the Tao, the way that the world flows through time. I guess it's sort of like a similar kind of thing. Uh, an example that's given of Hegelian dialectic is we have the French Revolution. Let's say that's the thesis. Freedom spreads through these democratic movements. So the French Republic is born, and soon it gives birth to the reign of terror, which is the antithesis. And then eventually, out of that, these events, tumultuous events, comes the full constitutional state of France, the Republic France. Hegel's Geist interacts and develops with the world. We can study its manifestations, and thus study of the phenomena of the spirit. The world, he calls it Weltgeist. The world is the expression of Weltgeist, the world spirit. And each period in history has its Zeitgeist. Some of you may recognize the word Zeitgeist means the spirit of the age. Once in a while, he believed in a kind of hero worship, Hegel. So he said, once in a while, we'll get a man, usually a man, right? Usually, because who else could it be? Sexist. Once in a while, we'll get a man who will embody the spirit of the age, like Caesar, Augustus Caesar, or maybe Napoleon. He loved Napoleon. He thought Napoleon, do I have the picture? He met him once in a parade and he said, he described him as world spirit on a horseback. He saw Napoleon as embodying the spirit of his age, the zeitgeist. The zeitgeist may not always be a hero. It could be an anti-hero, right? It could be a monster. Like Hitler. If I were a Hegelian, I would maybe identify Hitler as an anti-hero embodying that sort of dark zeitgeist of that period. Otherwise, like how could one man end up killing millions of people, right? So some people they're used by the Zeitgeist to express the thoughts of the spirit. So that's Hegelian. Some of the consequences of his philosophy. I suppose we'll have to end with this because we're running out of time. Western civilization. He was a proud Prussian. That's like Germany, right? Prussia, Germany, Austria-Hungarian. These are German kingdoms, right? All spoke German. So these are all Germans. What he believed was the European civilization, the West European civilization, the Christian civilization was the fullest expression of the spirit. All of history had been leading up to his own society. And because of his philosophy, with this insight that history is God, the spirit expressing itself, with this insight, the spirit has come to yet another level of understanding itself. History is the process of his spirit understanding itself. So this kind of idea was very popular in Hegel's Europe. And for him, the way we should live our lives, the way I should live my life is to take part in what is happening with the world. So he called it ethical lives. We must lead ethical lives. We must participate in our society. Right? So he would be the opposite of a hermit, like go on your own and just pray to God. He would be the opposite of that. Participate in your society, become an active participant as much as you can in what is happening in the world, right? Because we are the fullest expression yet in history of our zeitgeist. Of course, I'm sure Hegel didn't think like this maybe, but of course, this is how other Europeans would interpret Hegel's philosophy. Since we are the most enlightened, at the top, right, we Christian civilization we are the most civilized, the most enlightened expression of the spirit. We have a duty, the part of the ethical lives, we have a duty to civilize the rest of the world, to civilize the rest of the world, to bring to them the light of God, right? The light of Christianity. They even had a name for this kind of thing. They called it the white man's burden. I know this is history now, but they actually believe nowadays the phrase white man's burden is a negative phrase. But back then, this is the 19th century, early 19th century, they really believed this is how the world was going to be saved. We have white race, we have a burden to civilize the rest of the world, right? These savages, right? And then, of course, sometimes guns are needed, sometimes an axe is needed. bombs are needed. But that was the spirit of the age, as Hegel would say. This was the spirit, the zeitgeist of Western imperialism of the long 19th century. I think Schopenhauer is the only one that's remaining, right? It's not the only one remaining. I believe I have about maybe 10 minutes with Schopenhauer. So Schopenhauer, and then next Tuesday. So we have classes Tuesday now until week 14, where we have a video on suicide. Next Tuesday, we cover the other classical answers, and then we move on to other topics. Please be here. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.